has rung. I suppose it's time to start now. We will get back to our presentations. Thank you to OVD Kinegram for supporting our networking coffee break a few moments ago. We move on with a presentation by Infotech, and the presenter back this year is Jelena Razdorova. She is Business Development Manager at Infotech. Backed by 10 years of professional experience in business development and customer relations, Jelena is currently responsible for identifying and establishing new business accounts and opportunities at Infotech. In addition to providing strategic market analysis, Jelena also creates strong business relationships with key decision makers and represents Infotech at major industry events worldwide and others such as this one. So, Jelena, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad to see you here, and I'm glad that you make it off a coffee break, because I know how coffee is important. So I won't bore you, and let's just talk about user biometric authentication and the balance between security, convenience, and privacy. But first, let me introduce our company. So we're at Infotech, global system integrators and software developers for electronic ID documents and banking cards. So we do all the issuance process, and we help governments and banks worldwide to effectively collect, process, and verify their citizens' personal data, including biometrics. So we have about 15 years of deep market expertise, and we have references worldwide. If you're wondering what are they, it's, for example, the European Union diplomatic passport, it's ECOWAS passports, Liechtenstein, Ireland, Cambodia, Moldova, and many others. We are about 100 experts in the team, and 70% of them are software developers. So that's pretty much our geography and references that gives you a little bit idea of what we have done already. Our head office is in Europe. It's Riga, Latvia. And I'm wondering, guys, who knows where Latvia is? Raise your hands. Okay, so good. In case people doesn't know, we have the branch in Switzerland, because everybody knows Switzerland. And we also have office in Kenya, because it's warm there. But okay, we have also representatives in Latin America and Africa. And now, the topic. How do we authenticate ourselves? Single factor or multi-factor? What's easy? Password is easy, right? So you just type your password and you're in. You easily access your information. But is it secure? Is it safe? It can be lost, it can be forgotten, it can be stolen. According to many researchers, the most common passwords in 2017 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or QWERTY, or even princess. Or, well, is it secure? I don't think so. Is it convenient? Yeah, sure. And how many times we have done that? We just write down our password because it's super cool, right? And you tend, like you're afraid to forget it. So you write it down, you put a Post-it note, and here you go. You can be easily hacked. There was an accident in the television when the reporter made a reportage and telling about the company that has been hacked due to these insecure passwords. What's interesting that after he told his story, somebody zoomed in, and in the background, actually, that was written the Twitter account, the name and the password. How awkward. And the password was le mot de passe, which is the password in French. So many times we got into these awkward situations. And people prevented from accessing my account because of a bad password. That's, in most cases, us. Or super duper secure password with the caps sensitive and all that stuff. And that's again us. And how many of you are using the same password for different web pages? I won't lie, I use one. Like, I have this super convenient password, and sometimes it's just easy, you know? You punch it here, and okay, that's just an email. It's not my, okay, like, private email. It's just for junk. But it can be easily stolen and traced, and even your bank account can be hacked. So, yeah, password is dead. We no longer want to authenticate ourselves with just a password. 52% of people prefer more modern authentication methods. So the dual-factor, multi-factor authentication, and biometric authentication. So we can still use the password as the step one, but then we should provide the second factor, which could be even like token, the text message that you receive, or any other code, or your own biometrics. So, and biometrics, that's something that is always with you. It's fingerprints, or the iris, or the face recognition. So it's easy, it's cool, it's super secure. There are also clauses everywhere, so it's privacy-related issues. What if somebody steals your password? Well, it steals your password, it hacks you and whatever. What if somebody steals your fingerprints? Oh, then we're in trouble. It could be. The appearance. Yesterday I had my hair down, now I have hair up. So how it's working? Do you even recognize me now? Will technology recognize? Or the plastic surgeries, you know, this funny accident in China when the girls went there for plastic surgery, and then the face recognition like failed, and they were denied the boarding because they didn't look the same. So there are different factors, different yes or no's, and how we can use it in everyday lives. Iris and dynamic signature and the palm veins, which became very, very popular. And it's very cool and easy. You can just click the mouse while there is a sensor inside the mouse, and it's reading your palm vein print. But maybe we're like a little bit overcomplicating things, and we're want to use all this multi-factor authentication, and in the end, we're getting something different. Like, for example, this super secure ATM machine with the voice recognition, with the palms, with the prints, everything so super secure. So just, you know, do all these steps, like Twister, and tell 3 times. I want to withdraw $100. So what else can we do? Maybe I can authenticate ourselves remotely. So maybe there is software. Okay, there is software. Where can you authenticate yourself with your smartphone? You read the MRZ code, then you put this ID card, tap it to your phone. It's read and it takes all the certifications from your document. So it authorizes you, then you can do the face recognition, and it's one-to-one matching. So then you're authorized, and it's easy, it's secure, and it's document applied, and it could be it. I'll show you a little video to explain you more. Okay, so I hope I made it a little bit clear. I hope I cheered you up. And if you have questions, please come find me. If you forget my company name, it's on your lanyard. It's ex-Infotech company. So that's a little hint for you. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Jelena. You lived up to your reputation of a lively and entertaining presentation. Thank you so much. We now move on to our next presentation. It will be on ARH company. It will be made by two persons. The first one, Mr. Gabor Jozsa. Was that correct? Good. Thank you. Gabor joined the company while still a full-time student in university, and he started in sales. Over the years, he climbed the company ladder and was progressively regional sales manager for the EU, sales director at the passport reader and biometrics department, and is now director of ITS and director of sales. He'll be joined on stage by Janos Friss. Was that good again? Good. Thank you. So Janos has a master's degree in international trade from the University of Economics in Budapest. Except for some years in the diplomatic service with the UN in Yemen and the Hungarian embassy in Sweden, he devoted his long career in various sales and business promotional jobs. I invite you both on stage, and I believe you will be making the presentation together. So we have a tag team presentation for the company. Gentlemen, please.
Good. What's to do with it?
Next, you just press
Okay, good.
you want the screen.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big honor to be here. I think this is my 50th presence on this ICAO forum or trip, what you call it now. But this is the first time I'm on the stage. This is a joint presentation because this year we decided to come together with ARH, which is our Hungarian technology partner. But my company is called JURA or JURA, whatever you like. And I'm one of the sales directors, and my responsibility is security features for travel documents. There is no slide on the company because normally we are requested not to make a commercial presentation. So the company is Hungarian-based, and our core product is the design workstations for banknote and high security printers. This is our core business. Our secondary business is certain features for travel documents. Though this is my profession and this is my job, this is why I'm getting some money sometimes, I hate passports. So I went to the passport office because my passport expired, and I wanted to get a chip under my skin because this is how the dog in the neighborhood is identified. But the clerk in the passport office told me that I'm a crazy old guy, I'm really stupid, I should know that this is not enough secure, you must have a booklet with the multiple features. So I went back to the office and forced my colleagues to create some strong security features. What are these security features? First of all, what we do is we protect the passport. We don't protect really the person. We don't do face recognition. We do not do a security with the smartphone like ex-Infotech. We secure the passport itself. And what is the most important in the passport? Definitely the number one biometric, which is the face. the portrait. So we have actually 3 different features to protect the passport and to protect the data. One is, let me, yeah, okay, now I think I'll go back because it's not a movie. We were requested to have a short presentation. So the first one is IPI, which you might know. It is almost 20-year-old, and it appears in about 60 different documents globally. And without any modesty, I think it's a good and successful and famous feature, which probably most of you know from different passports. Then on the screen, you see encrypted IPI, which is exactly the same, but we let the customer first encrypt the personal data, and then we hide the data, the personal data, into the photo in an encrypted form. It means that you cannot read it with the lens. You can read it with the software only, and this is why we are working very strongly with ARH, because we need a reader, an electronic passport reader, to identify the encrypted IPI. And the third one is the letter screen plus, excuse me, which is a secondary image. It's a ghost image, a ghost portrait with very high security characteristics. So let's talk about the IPI first, which you know probably from various other sources. It encodes personal data into the photo, and the information is invisible. It is not visible until you put a certain small plastic lens into it, or on it, over it, or you read it with the electronic passport reader of ARH, or, sorry Gabor, but of any other reader manufacturers. It eliminates the photo replacement. The verification doesn't need special knowledge or experience, and it's a very easy verification just everywhere, and not only on the border. Mind you, border is only one place where you need to identify yourself and when you have to let your passports or documents checked. So we have the photo, we have the portrait, we have the personal data, we have a software which generates the module, and then we print it together, and then you can verify it with the lens or with the machine. This is what we do when we verify with the machine. It's a software which we download to the passport reader, and then the hidden information comes up on the screen. It's a very, very easy process and successful. Then we have the encrypted version, which is practically the same, but instead of readable data, we print a kind of barcode, a 2D barcode, which only the authorized personalities or authorized organizations can read and verify. Again, the same process. We have the portrait, we have the personal data in an encrypted form, and then we print it together. Verification, you put it on the ARH reader or with the mobile phone, but the mobile phone is always a pain because the iPhone doesn't work, and the new version and the new software. So I think a passport should be read by professional equipment and not by toys which the university students can manipulate at any time. We have very bad experience with such manipulations. Now the letter screen, a little bit longer on the letter screen if I have time, because this is the latest feature and this is the strongest feature, which I really love. It's an attractive design feature for primary control and also for a forensic check and for automatic verification. It's a ghost image which can be laser engraved, can be inkjet printed, and it can be printed even with UV ink, so it's invisible. It can be on the data page, can be on the first visa page or observation page. Again, the same philosophy that we have the portrait, we have the personal data, and then we have the software which ends up in printing or engraving a very nice ghost image with micro letters. How? Let me go back for a while, for a second. I forgot to mention that there is a unique personal ID. The unique personal ID is very simple. It's the OCR line. The OCR line is always unique in every passport, needless to say. So it's very important because we use the OCR line to have a unique personal ID like that. If somebody's changing or manipulating the one of the figures, letters, whatever, in the OCR, then you get a completely different wave structure, because arithmetically, mathematically, we compose the wave structure from the OCR line. And again, this is authentication. You put it on the machine, and you don't do anything. I mean, if you are a border officer, you don't do anything. You just put it on, and the software does the rest. And the software will show you the yes or no sign, go, or just an arrow to the prison, whatever you like. It's up to you how you make it. The officer can also show the lines, or some of the lines, to show to the passengers, in case of any doubt, that the lines are not identical, because the reader recalculates the line structure and also scans the line structure like a fingerprint, and the two must be identical to each other. So it's a level 1 because with a magnifier you can read easily the text, and the text must correspond to the printed data. As a second level, it's the machine verification, which I just showed you a second ago. It's an automatic process, and it is also, well, maybe it's a wrong expression that it's level 3, but it's a forensic. It allows you for forensic check, because you can put in deliberate errors, as many as you want, and then I will really congratulate the forger who can follow it and find out the way how the deliberate errors were done. And well, just the conclusion, the advantage is very fast, very error tolerant, works with any full-page passport reader. Sorry, Gabor, not only ARH. And secret algorithm, so it's very difficult to forge or counter reproduce it. And it is software based only, so ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't cost too much. Bad for me. And now I think it was short enough, because it's a joint presentation with ARH. So thank you very much. We have a booth, and we are always available day and night. Thank you. I just had the glass to show that I'm a serious guy. Otherwise, I don't need glasses. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor again to be here. In the next couple of minutes, I would like to show you, why I think that document readers are still a very important factor in border control and security. So first of all, a little introduction. My name is Gabor Jozsa, and although I've gone through several roles in my career with ARH, I'm standing in front of you as a recent product management director. And for those who don't know, our company, ARH is an acronym for Adaptive Recognition Hungary, which is reflects to the Hungarian origin and to the intelligent software that we design, mainly to read documents and also to verify them. This will be also the main theme of my presentation, to show you how ID reading and verification solution looks now today. So just the basic content. I would like to tell you about the recent changes that happened in the market and why I think it's a challenge, or even harder than before, to find a virtuous vendor for ID readers. What are the key steps in reading and verifying an ID document, and how we as ARH contribute to these tasks. So if we jump back around 10 years in time, around the economical crisis, private sector had to face with a great challenge, how to increase customer service, how to make processes smoother, easier. So one answer was to apply document scanners. So for everyday document processing tasks, you don't need to type manually, which is taking time and error prone, but you can use dedicated devices for this task. So after using readers mainly in the border control and immigration, the private sector was a big game changer. The new challenge was, of course, to make small, stylish, affordable scanners. So the whole industry started to focus in that direction. There was also another helping factor, which is the technology improvements. Simply the LEDs, the sensors become more affordable, so we can decrease the size and we can also decrease the cost of the readers. Sooner, there was a new player in the market, which is the smartphone. Everybody uses smartphones. I'm sure you have seen these latest OCR applications. You don't have to type in your credit card information anymore. This is very convenient and also fast. This is very widely accepted so far. However, the accuracy is still a bit inferior to a dedicated document scanner. As Janos mentioned, you need some professional tools to get professional results. So there are some limitations there. So if you look at the market today, we see that there are three main areas. One is the mobile OCR market, which is very quick, relatively cost-effective, but there are some downsides, like very sensitive on the lighting conditions, how you take your phone, so the angle has to be precise. So there are, I would say it's a low entry solution and it will definitely have a future. What about the first line ID processing? This is the most widespread. You can meet with this technology in telecom companies when you make a subscription for your new iPhone, or if you open a bank account, but even in hotel check-in, car rentals, border control, it's all over there. It's a mature technology, and I would say that the only downside is that we haven't reached the $100 price tag yet. But if you help us to buy more and more readers, I think it's a realistic goal. And there is the second line processing, which is also used, but it's a very niche market, mainly for document experts in law enforcement. It's a different market. So what happened in the last few years, like 10, 15 years, there were a lot of company mergers. Some companies disappeared from the market, while others are not focusing 100% on this market. So the real knowledge is now concentrated to a handful of companies, and without modesty, I can say that we are among those handful of leading companies there. So what we can offer you, first of all, we have 25 years of experience. We do only this. We have our own designing and manufacturing team. All the hardware and scanner and the software, sorry, is in one hand, so we can make an integrated and fully tested solution. We have all the tools and all the certificates to provide you the top-notch technology. Well, going further, I would like to not bore you too much with the technical details. I can show you it at our booth, which is actually just in front of the main entrance. But just a few things. The first is the image quality, which is the essential part of any reading or authentication. We have high-resolution images, even up to 1000 dpi. We have factory color-calibrated mechanism during the production. So the image quality is there and superior. The next part is reading the data optically. We use our own OCR to read MRZ and VIZ code lines. We can read the ICAO, native ICAO codes, but also the document-specific VIZ codes, including barcodes. So sort to say everything which is written in the document we can pull out and also cross-check. The recent years' development were more focusing on the E element. We have our own RFID controller designed in-house, so we are not depending on any third-party technology. And we follow all the latest standards. If you are a professional, you know what are these acronyms. Otherwise, it's easy to say that even the latest, very high bit rate, the new generation of e-passport chips are also supported. And the most interesting part is the verification of the document optically, where we have a list of, let's say, standard security features, which are also mentioned in the ICAO 9303 standard. Plus, we also have a long list of document-specific features coming from color correlation analysis or counting the little fluorescent fibers in the material of the paper. These are all trained in the software, so just in a fraction of seconds, we can provide a very accurate verification result. So it's very shortly. I hope it will. I made you interested, and I would be very pleased to welcome you at our booth. Thank you. May I just reattach?
So I remove the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor. Thank you very much, Gabor and Janos, for your presentations this morning. We now move on to Julian Payne. Julian is the creative director at De La Rue. In that capacity, he leads a team that has designed over 40% of the world's banknote denominations in circulation today, as well as numerous passports and ID documents, including the UK passport. With a background and career in product management, Julian brings an understanding of the importance of design to the use, performance, and emotional connection users have with the product. He is also driving an agenda of engagement between the security design and the wider design communities, forging relationships with leading UK design colleagues and design studios. Julian has been with De La Rue since 2012, where previously he held the position of product director for identity and product authentication products. His focus was on the provision of digital and manufactured services and products that allow people to travel, as well as protecting global brands from counterfeiters. So, Julian, the floor is yours.
Hello, Madame et Monsieur, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Julian Payne. I'm the creative director at De La Rue. My talk today, I'm going to kind of split it into two sections. First, I'm maybe going to explore some sort of designers' perspectives on what is happening within identity document and passport design. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the methodology that I think we should be adopting across the industry in terms of how we design integrated ID documents. There will, because of be a little bit of bias towards the passport more than perhaps birth certificates or ID cards, but I think the principles are sound and should be applied to all kind of document types. So let's see if I can work a clicker. There's a few things that I think one can consider about identity documents, and particularly the passport, that's quite unusual between the relationship between citizen and state. We fill out tax returns and those sorts of things, and generally we don't feel very happy about those sorts of documents. However, with passports or driving licenses, they can carry an emotional currency that resonate beyond the utilitarian use of the document. People like to go through their passport, look at their visa stamps, think about the journeys they've had. Their driving license marks a turning point in their life when they sort of became an adult. Mum and dad allowed them to drive the car. So there are emotional connections in these documents that are unusual between a state and a citizen. That, however, should not mask the primary focus of the document. It is a part of a critical national infrastructure. And governments should look at their documents in that perspective, and most do, frankly. And that's there about, you need to trust the document, it needs to, and confidence is born of the technology, the security, and the construction of that document and its use in the field, which can be 10 or 20 years in terms of its life. So it's got to last for a long time in the environment in which it's released. And lastly, and particularly passports, but I think the whole suite of documents, be that birth certificates, visa stickers, passports, whatever it may be, it's about representing a nation and the choice of iconography, the choice of themes, the colorways, all of those things are very important. So there's quite a lot of balance to consider from a design perspective as you approach the brief. I think one of the interesting kind of trends that's occurred over the last 20 years, really, and consciously or unconsciously, is the move away from the passport being a more utilitarian, functional device. So if you think of the books of maybe 15 years ago, and some examples here, you can see a UK book, a New Zealand book, a Finland book. They're typified, 15 years ago, typified lots of guilloche, maybe a single icon on the page. It's pretty utilitarian, right? It's secure for the time. But from around 2008, 2009 onwards, you see nations adopting cross-page spreads, which are very secure, but more and more emotive uses of icons, right? You've got the UK book using is Innovators. Before that, it was Scenic Britain. We've got Norway going out for a public design competition with fjords and mountains. Canada's book with Bright UV, which was very publicly engaging. New Zealand's book, really interesting design in terms of describing a narrative. These are designed to engage with the public, and that's useful on one extent because you want interrogation of the book, you want people to understand it, you want them to look after it, frankly, you don't want them to lose it. So you want some personal ownership of the book. But I think as you start moving into what I would describe as novelty, for example, perhaps the Finnish elk moving across the page as you flick through it, what security purpose did that serve? What does that how does that help the border agent? And is that a step of engagement too far? Does it move away from the primary purpose of the design? And I think that there's a balance that we have to think about. We might have reached, I think, in the design process, a point where we need to think about who are we designing for? So that's sort of a design observation on trends. And I think it goes further than that into the whole sort of passport service. Our desire as designers is to think about, because the passport is personalised, it's for an individual, you think, oh, it should be a personal service, and we've seen governments across a range of sort of government areas from tax to driving licence application become far more commercially aware. In the UK, when I apply for my driving licence, it is a fantastic, or road tax, it's a great service, it works really well, because they've taken a whole load of learnings out of the commercial world's kind of approach to service and customers and being customer-centric and quick to respond. All of that's really good. When we get to identity services, we need to remind ourselves that we're working in a very different kind of different world, and in the sense that actually you apply for a passport, you don't choose to have one, you apply, and the government gives you permission as to whether you can have one. There's no choice unless perhaps you have dual citizenship. Secondly, as I've spoken about earlier, it's a mission-critical service. If I don't have a passport, I cannot cross the borders of my country. I am wholly reliant on my government to help me do that. And that's very different to, I'm going to go to Zappos or Amazon and choose a sofa that I really like. And of course, it's got to be functional. This product, the passport or an ID card, has to be used and understood, not just in your own country, but in a myriad of other countries and territories. So I think underlining the difference in terms of the product brief, the design brief, is very different between moving towards a very personalised service. Which gets us to, who are you really designing for? Who is the end user? Your end user of this product. What's the use case for? And sort of the shorthand we use at De La Rue around this is, you've got to fall in love with your problem. You've got to understand the insight, the needs, and the drivers of the end users. And we apply that in currency and passport and ID and all the products that we design to really understand it properly. Whoops. So who are the end users really for us? So you're looking at, border control would be the primary user of the document. So whilst a lot of my talk so far has sort of thought about end users and their emotional relationship with a passport, and we all have one, don't we? Actually, you're really designing for the border agent. He or she faces, hundreds, if not thousands, of passport books every week. They're looking for the security features. They're looking to authenticate it. You want easy to authenticate features that are difficult to manufacture, difficult to replicate. And that is the game. And of course, there are a whole bunch of other users you could identify through the process. The counterfeiter, of course, the citizen, and increasingly machinery sat at the border or sat somewhere else within the identity chain that we must consider. But you're aiming really for the border agent. I could talk a long time about this, so I'm going to kind of hurry on. But the other piece is thinking about passport design as a service and where that all fits together within the cycle. And one of the things we do and like to break down is the idea of what are the use cases for the document. What challenges is it going to face in the field? So in you designing a passport, you think about what's the application process look like? How do I get the passport to the citizen? Does the first journey work? Does it work on the e-gate at the first time? So you're trying to design the steps. And for different countries, there'll be different use cases for that document as well. So in the UK, for example, we don't have a national ID card. Therefore, the passport is used to apply for jobs, to get you into nightclubs, to open bank accounts. That means there's a whole bunch of different design decisions. So the bank manager, when I'm opening my bank account, have I got the public education and the features bold enough that he or she can read that passport and understand that this is a valid UK passport and not a forgery? So, getting on to evidence-led design, it's really about, from my perspective, it's design in 5 dimensions. We've talked about end users, and to Nick Google's kind of language on this, understand the end user, and all else will follow. And that might be the border agent, as we've talked about, but there are other sub-user groups as well that you need to understand. The next piece is what designers bring is inspiration to it, right? You want an iconic document that represents your country, that citizens will be proud of, that you feel some sense of ownership to. And that's about working in partnership with government, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more. The next 2 areas around materials and integrated design cannot be understated. The designer of a modern passport needs to be able to work in polycarbonate, polymer, paper, security inks, holography, link that with inspirational design and link that with an understanding of how the materials are going to behave when they're combined. It's a technical and inspirational job. And therefore, it's really important that you have teams that are able to think about the integration. Trying to buy or pull together lots of separate security features and hope they're going to hang together is not going to be a happy ending, or it's going to be a longer journey than perhaps you anticipated. So I think you need to take that view. You're combining technologies right from the start and have designers that understand intimately how those technologies work together. And then lastly, speak from experience, you are going to, over the course of a contract, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of these books are going to be made. Security comes from repeatability. And the book made on the first day of the new passport issued and the book made 5 years later needs to be forensically identical. And that is, sits with the designer. He or she has to get that design right so it's completely manufacturable, repeatable, and continues through the process. So there's that's why it's quite a juggle. It's not just about let's choose the nation's favorite waterfall or most famous bridge. This is about really thinking about a multi-dimensional design brief. The other thing is getting your client at the heart of the design process. This is not a design that happens perhaps as it was 20 years ago, where some clever designer thinks of some ideas, sends them out to a government, and we make a book. Insights around how the books are used, insights about cultural cues are all really important. Also, I should kind of put your feet in the design in the customer's shoes. It is a very politically challenging role, as probably many of you know. There's a public budget, there's a public timescale, there'll be press and legislative kind of scrutiny of the project. Expect it runs on time, expect it to run on budget. And if you choose perhaps icons and features that are wrong or the wrong sort of price, there'll be hell to pay. So it's a difficult job. Equally, and it's not true for all countries, often many countries, the man or the woman leading the project will be a very experienced civil servant, but might be their first time in the role. And they would not have designed necessarily one of these documents before. So the job of the designers, on top of all those other things I've already talked about, is really around it's a fulfilling role. Not many people get to lead the design of their nation's passport. It should, small f, be fun, and it should be a great honour. Therefore, around inspiring, guiding, and counselling, and companies like De La Rue and others, we've designed over 25 passports. We've got some pretty good experience of what happens around the world, what works well, what doesn't, and how you design for the use cases that are unique to your country. On top of that, we're thinking about counterfeit, and we could probably do a whole talk about counterfeit by itself. I won't, but there's a few things to think about. What are you aiming to defend against? What are the threat levels in your country that will be pertinent to your country that perhaps are not pertinent to others? We see a lot of counterfeit working around alteration, so that's removal of pages and replacement of pages, or grinding of polycarbonate, and thinking of the defense strategies for that. So different counterfeit threats will engender different design techniques to counter them. Equally, you're thinking about where does your country's passport sit on sort of the attractiveness list for the counterfeiter? So, European nations, for example, with visa-free access to 27, 28 countries and more probably, are very attractive and will demand a whole different bunch of security features versus perhaps some other countries where, visas are required for most travel destinations. So you've got to think about the appropriateness of the security strategy you are applying for the risk profile you have as a passport country. So a little bit about my squad. We split into two big disciplines. One is creative, so 22 creative designers. It won't surprise you to hear we work in every discipline of paper, polycarbonate, polymer, print and holography, and technical designers, that's engravers, originators and proofing team. So we can produce a prototype product, all within the same studio, including all of the different technology groups brought together. So I can control the integration of the technologies all in one place. And I think that's what gives real security to a passport. It's also about innovation. We work really closely with our colleagues in R&D to develop new technologies. So if you want to come and see me later, I'll show you the new tricks that are inside our latest book. But it's about working with the new material science, and designers can really bring a different perspective to how you might treat it versus a scientist. So we work really closely with our R&D labs in Overton to develop new technologies for our ID documents. This one's on polycarbonate, and there are debates around whether you should choose it or not. The point I want to, and you can see the stats really, you can read them for yourselves, but the point I want to make is actually putting a polycarbonate page or a paper page doesn't make, with a great laminate, doesn't make your book any intrinsically secure. What makes it secure is how you integrate it with a book construction, the choice of security features that work together, maybe the choice of holography or Dovid, the thematics you're running through that book, the personalization systems that you're choosing. It's the combination of those things. The choices are open. They're for you to make against the risk profile and the use cases that you will see your book facing or your ID document facing. So I think the argument of whether one's better or one's not is almost irrelevant. It's the integration technology you're using within the book or within the ID document that is going to make it a great document and a secure document. Am I doing for time? Am I over? Oh, okay, sorry, I don't want to keep you from your lunch, you see. So there's a few things as well. So layers of security. So I'll give you some examples from customers. So this is a UK passport. The last passport was around invention, innovators and creative minds within the United Kingdom. Jigsaws were a British invention, and it's what the designers do here. They're bringing the use of registered UV with the thematic around invention, jigsaws, working in a very difficult to print combination, lithographic printing. And that's what you're asking designers to do, that balancing of the 5 dimensions. Here you get it. It's the inspiration, it's the technology, it's some quite clever application of some print tech. Equally, I think it's important that designers get under the skin of a country. This is an Afghanistan visa page, or part of it. We sent our designer to Kabul. He spent some time in the bazaars there looking at carpets, and that's what the customer was really interested in us to develop. And so, the security is very similar to what you see in other passports, but the cultural identifiers are very unique to Afghanistan. Last example here is a Kenyan, a spread from a Kenyan book. And that's interesting because the EAC, the East African community, have quite controlled rules on colorways within the book, the book cover, the positioning of the watermarking. So it's relatively prescriptive, but you can still capture the essence of the culture even within those sorts of constraints, if you can call them that. And again, it's about understanding the country, understanding the culture, and understanding the range of security features that you can deploy. The thematics make little difference to the security features you can deploy, but it's really important that you can link the two together, and a great designer working in a multifunctional team is able to do that. So, to conclude, you have to rephrase it, you have to fall in love with the problem, and to make that clear, that is understanding who are the end users, how are they using the document, and what are the use cases that you are going to require that document to kind of be ready for. Secondly, security only comes through the integration of the security features. There are no killer standalone features. There are some great features, but it's only through their combination with others, their combination with the design, the combination with the thematics, with the construction of the document, that you are going to get great kind of secure devices that are going to last the test of time and last for their circulating life. And lastly, it's around, it's got to create resonance. You want the public to kind of like it and love it. They're not the most important end user, as we discussed, but it's great when they go, I love it. I love our country's passport. I love my ID card. It looks really cool. It really represents who I think what this nation is about. And so you do want that inspirational design. How far you go, of course, is an open question. But that's my wrap up. If you have any further questions, I appreciate there's not time here today. I'm running a design workshop this afternoon at 3:15 on the 3rd floor, so do come and say hi, and any questions you have, please fire away then. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Julian. Quite a different kind of presentation, interesting as well, of course, and bringing up the emotional attachment that one has to a document, I thought was quite revealing. Yes, we now have for the next presentation an old friend coming back to ICAO, Mary Olson from Entrust Datacard. Mary is the Senior Marketing Manager of Government Solutions at Entrust. In this role, she helps drive government market strategies for the company to maximize Entrust presence in various ID markets, such as passport travel ID, national ID and driver's licenses, government employee ID, social services, and many others. Mary also has extensive training in field research, working with forensic document experts, first-line inspectors, and government agencies deploying secure documents. Mary, over to you. And welcome again.
Thank you. Good morning. When I thought about presenting again at ICAO, I thought to myself, I wonder if people really know who Entrust Datacard is and how we might be personally impacting your lives every day. So most of you may not realize it, but most of you are a customer of ours today. In fact, if you have a credit card or a debit card in your wallet, you're most likely a customer of ours, because over 90% of all of the financial cards issued in the world today are using our technology. Also, many of you are carrying either a national ID or a driver's license. In fact, if you're from Canada, you're most likely a customer of ours, because we issue and personalize over 70% of the driver's licenses in Canada, mostly with laser engraving and polycarbonate ID cards. Over 50% of the national ID cards personalized in the world today use our technology. And in over 25 countries in the world are either using PKI technology or personalization technology, or both, that were created by Entrust Datacard. So if you're a US citizen
Or if you're a Canadian citizen, you definitely are carrying a passport that was, the data was secured by using Datacard, Entrust Datacard PKI technology. So many of you may be familiar with our traditional personalization systems, but do you know that every day digital technologies are securing online banking transactions for you, and they also might be securing physical and digital transactions for access control for corporations and government agencies and their citizens. So Datacard Group acquired Entrust about 3 years ago, and we rebranded and became Entrust Datacard. And we think about securing lives every day, and our strategy is simple. We strive to be the best manufacturer of secure identity technology and secure transactions, and we deliver these solutions through our customers. Many of you in the audience today and exhibiting with us that are distribution partners and our integrator partners. So now we offer a full suite of physical and digital technologies for trusted identities and secure transactions. Our solutions follow a natural life cycle associated with establishing proven identity and provisioning and use and validation for strong identity credentials. The Entrust Datacard brand is really synonymous with global leadership for document personalization and PKI. We also demonstrate today leadership, though, in mobile ID, cloud-based trust infrastructures, and provisioning, and solutions for the Internet of Things. So even though we're experiencing the digital transformation, we believe that the identity and the credential will be part of its core for some time. So it's important that we know the requirements of a secure credential so that we can continue to provide technologies not only for today, but innovate and make products that are needed for the future. So first, we need technologies that help assure that the document is authentic with validation and it was issued by the appropriate authority. And next, we really need to provide physical and digital features that are designed to prevent against modification or at least make it tamper evident, right? The contents of the machine-readable zone are hashed prior to be digitally signed, and then at validation time, the hash is recomputed and compared to the digital signature. If the digital signature was proven authentic, the recomputed hash will match the original, and then only do you have high assurance that this product or this identity document was not tampered with. Thirdly, we know that there's little value in proving the authenticity of an electronic document if we cannot establish that it's being used by the rightful holder. For this, you need to establish that there's strong biometric linkage of the holder to the electronic document. And today, typically in the past, it was achieved through a visual comparison of the picture to the data in the chip that was protected of that of the person. But now we know millions and millions of travel documents are being lost and stolen and sold to lookalikes. In fact, that happened to me in Colombia. I'm sure somebody using my passport someday, because 2 years ago, my purse was stolen with all my identity documents. It's quite a humbling experience if you haven't experienced it. So imposters like these will actually get by a busy control border guard or an e-gate that's doing the analysis and the facial recognition and matching. At the bottom, you can see kind of a humorous illustration of some of the latest threats that we're seeing in identity documents. It's called facial morphing. Facial morphing entails combining the legitimate image of the holder excuse me, with the image of the perpetrator. I'm not sure it would have done as well if I would have went Bush to Trump instead of Bush to Obama, but you can see how it's amazing that these transitions of legitimate facial features actually may not be picked up by some of the biometric facial matching systems. So finally, the personalization data within the document needs to be controlled and available only to authorized inspectors. The electronic communication between the chip and the reader must be protected and provide assurance that the chip to the reader were not intercepted. So now I'd like to ask the audience a question and ask for your participation. The first question is, do you think innovation and technologies are driving standards? Raise your hand if you believe that. We got one. Okay, so maybe everybody else. Do you all believe that standards are driving innovation and technology in the marketplace? Okay, none. Okay. But, well, I guess it's kind of a trick question. We believe at Entrust Datacard that it's kind of an answer of both, because we believe that the market problems that are associated with our daily lives are really driving the changes in how we're using technology, and this is driving innovation, which then also drives the need for standards and interoperability. And not all companies are innovators, and they may be just producing products that meet ICAO standards or other standards for driver's license in the market to bring their solutions to the market. There's not one better or the other, but it happens both ways. Okay, so maybe everybody believed both, and I didn't give you that option also. Okay, so now I'd just like to take you on a brief journey to look at how technology, innovation, and standards have evolved over the past 4 decades. Let's start with the 80s. In the 80s, we experienced a surge in population and travel that drove requirements and change to physical identity documents. And we saw technology evolve from paper IDs to ID card form factors, and then they began adding glued-in photos, holograms, barcodes, thick film laminates, and the like. And then during that time period in the 80s, innovation occurred by Entrust Datacard, and we delivered the first high-speed embosser and first thermal graphics printing and make stripe encoding system for financial and ID cards. And then during this time, we saw standards evolve, including the ICAO 9303 document, which also provided the machine travel reader document. In the 90s, there was a drive for interoperability and higher security. And we saw new technologies like digital color photo printing, laser engraving, thin film overlays, integrated chips, PKI, and new biometrics evolved. And during this time, innovation at Entrust Datacard delivered the first ever high-speed digital color direct-to-card printer, the first high-speed color retransfer printer, and we also launched the very first desktop color printer. And we offered the market the very first commercial PKI. And then standards, we evolved also for ISO, IEC card standards for the make stripe and the chip, and the ICAO 9303 document evolved as well with, chip advancements like LDS1 and BAC. Okay, so the next you see a picture on the very top, second to the right, and it's a picture I think that we can all resonate with the New York skyline and the tragedy occurred that day. But in the 2000s, we all experienced some heightened terrorism. I think the very act of that day in New York helped bring on different changes in the marketplace, including the US visa waiver program, which generated new higher requirements for identity assurance. So the technology that came out then were travel documents for EMRT, which actually became the new normal, and technology that focused on chip improvements, advanced biometrics, and PKI. And during this time, we engineered the laser card personalization system for polycarbonate identity cards. And the 2000s brought additional standards to the market, including the ANSI ISO biometric driver's license standards, and I'm sure a lot of you are also familiar with the FIPS 201 by our federal government, also adopted highly by Australia. Okay, finally, 2010. This was a drive really for automation of borders and continued the market-provided advanced security and physical digital security feature. Mobile authentication, cloud technologies also became something that was being delivered to the market and cloud-based hosted trusted identity architectures. So during this era, Entrust Datacard delivered many new security features using variable data to create security like laser tact, laser shadow, Purser Curve LinkJet, and we also launched our mobile-derived credential, hosted PKI in the cloud, a product called IntelliTrust, and a product called IOTrust. These are digital applications to secure transactions for both governments and employee IDs, and also applications for the Internet of Things. So that's kind of the decade that we seen and evolved with innovation. So where do we think identity is taking us in the future? I'm sure a lot of you can resonate to this photo on the image and have been subjected to very long queues or very long lines at border control or even maybe at motor vehicle service centers. But governments and industry must provide technologies in the future that not only maintain security, but provide efficient services for citizens to move and get applications to benefits. So as we look to 2020 and beyond, the market drivers are focused on maintaining high security while improving efficiencies and providing 24/7 services to its citizens. One example that I know a lot of you here at ICAO are familiar with is the travel continuum and how we can optimize the travel continuum. Citizens are looking for convenience and ease of travel, and they're traveling much more often, both for business and for pleasure with their families. And as a result, we see forward-looking governments now focusing on streamlining the traveler experience and removing the border's choke point. That model that is in place today will no longer work for the future. So if we look at the borders, their authorities are now leveraging cloud and mobile technologies, and today travelers are seeking a more streamlined experience so they can provide data well in advance of their travel date, and this allows them to be investigated both national and international databases so that their assessed risk is much lower and have an easier travel experience. So we call this the trusted travelers, and those that are assessed as low travelers now have seamless routing at border controls, and they're leveraging automation like e-gates and kiosks. So this effectively is reducing that choke point that we are experiencing for years at the border control, and it also allows for expensive trained resources to really focus on higher risk potentials that are traveling through our borders. Okay. So increased use of biometrics, analytics, and automation spell efficiency, right, for new and upgraded border control environments. But recognize, though, that for any of these to have sufficient assurance, strong original identity vetting, and a strong credential identity is still very, very imperative. So far I've been speaking mostly about the changes that evolve with technology, but I think the most important part of any organization and any company are its people, right? It takes the people to drive all of these technologies and understand the needs for the marketplace. So I would just like to dedicate years of service with some of our people. I know there's many in this room that has people that have dedicated also their lives to the industry standards working groups, but we have a few that I'd like to give some credit to. So the first person I'd like to talk about is Brian Beach. He's at the top of the screen, and he has over 35 years of experience at Entrust Datacard, and he's currently the Director of Research and Development for our organization. But he's dedicated over 30% of any of his time and over 25 years experience to the ISO and standards activities, and he still currently chairs the B10 standards cards and related devices working groups. And he's also an active contributor to the SO, IEC, and SC17 standards. Denny Warwick, some of you probably know Denny. He has over 35 years experience at our organization, and he is recognized as one of the leading laser engraving experts in the world. He has worked on standards groups since 1989. I'm sure some haven't even been born yet. Yeah, I do that all the time, right? And he's actually an active contributor to many of the ISO IEC standards, and he's also named on over 30 US and foreign patents. And then finally, I'd like to honor a past colleague and friend, Sharon Boyd, who passed away last year after a long battle with cancer. But during her career, she was a dedicated contributor to the ICAO standards activities. She was a globally recognized expert in PKI, and she participated in the X509 PKI standards, the ETSI, ESI, and EMA standards. She was an active contributor to the US PKI government working groups, and as well as the European Brussels group, which they call BIG, and she was the chair of the Canadian Advisory Committee for the ISO IEC JTC1 SC17 and was a participant to the ICAO New Technologies Working Group. I know there's much more that she did, but there was just too much to name, but I give a tribute to Sharon, and I know she was respected in the community by many, and she'll be missed by many, including me. So we are just all about creating a world of trust. That's what our company does every day. Our technologies are used in over 400 ID projects around the world in more than 100 countries. Over 10 million identity and payment credentials are daily personalized using our systems, and our strategy remains the same. We focus on being the best technology provider backed by committed people to deliver secure transactions and trusted identities with the help of our distributor and many of our integrator partners in this room and at this conference today. We're committed to innovation and empowering people through education, and we offer non-commercial identity seminars to government agencies that we help them understand the global trends around the world, case studies of best practices of how people are using technology to issue ID1 and ID3 documents. And we provide on-hands interactive training where people can actually find security features in all layers of the document using real samples. We also communicate non-biased pros and cons of technologies because we literally deliver them all, but there's different use cases and different needs for customers. And then we also cover digital technology like PKI, digital signatures, and emerging technologies like mobile, cloud, IoT, application architectures. So in conclusion, on behalf of me and my team, we invite you all to stop by our booth, number 31, it's around the corner by the elevators, to see our technologies. At our booth today, we can actually do a live capture photo of you, get your biometrics, validate that this is an authentic document because we're combining both our personalization and our PKI technology, and we're digitally encrypting that without using a chip. And we can prove to you that this is not an authentic document because it'll trace it right back to the machine. And you can walk away with your own personalized laser engraved passport. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and listening and learning more about our company and our people. And we hope you enjoy your time in Montreal. It's a great city.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Yes, Montreal's a great city. I noticed that the photo where you had the queue waiting for the immigration was at Montreal's airport. We've solved that problem since then. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting when we talked about innovation, technology, the balance between the two. Well done. We're ready for lunch, and to invite us to lunch is the sponsor of the networking lunch break, Mr. Tony Pereira. He is the product marketing manager, government business unit at Gamalto, who's sponsoring the lunch. So Tony, floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you in advance.
very much. Hi. Did you got my new presentation right now? Yes, you did. Perfect. No, I'm gonna use it here. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank ICAO organization for the invitation for this presentation. And I would like to talk today about one very important component on the manufacturing of passports, specifically the hinge, which offers security for the data page, specifically when it's made with the polycarbonate data pages. So as you know, passports are made with many components, many secure components, and paper is being one of the most that carries that is in the entire book. So secure paper with different prints, different security features in the print, different inks like UVs, UV, IR, optically variable elements, the cover material, and also usually a chip, and in some cases the polycarbonate data page, the plastic data page. The PC pages have been it's a trend for the past 10 years, growing more and more. So it's important that we focus on one component that is the hinge. It is small, but yet very important for the security of the entire document. ICAO 9303, 7th edition, part 2, it lists one of the threats for the travel documents is the removal of the data page and the substitution of that page or other pages in the document, or the threat to open the page, remove the particular polycarbonate, and probably accessing the data or modifying the data in it. So we want to focus on what to do to improve the security on the data page. So I want to start by talking about the hinge. So what is the hinge? What are the elements that make the hinge so secure? And we're also going to be talking. I'm going to be talking here about what are the most common threats, the attacks that are used to penetrate the book and remove the hinge or to modify a data that is in the PC data page. I'm also going to be talking here about the security features that can be added to the document to make it even more secure. And I will highlight as well the adoption of different hinge constructions by the countries and the governments. And we're going to rate them to see how well they perform and what is the acceptance and how they are prepared to resist forensic attacks. So what is a hinge? There's one, this is a very simple illustration, I know, but it's a very important illustration because it shows very well what the hinge is all about. So the hinge is the connection between the PC data page and the book, right? So there are three very specific aspects that we consider when building a hinge, one of them being the flexibility, the durability, and the security. And there's also a fourth element that we consider specifically for those who build the passports, those who make passports. It is the ease of handling and processing the hinge within the passport construction. So here are some pictures that illustrate to you what the hinge is. We're going to be talking more about them in the next slides. So just showing some constructions. And some attacks being made trying to remove it, as you can see in these pictures. So let's talk about flexibility. Flexibility, it's a very important point because actually it's for the user convenience. So if you think about as an inspector, I want to make sure that when I open a book, it stays open while I'm doing my work, while I am analyzing the document and I'm looking in the person. I don't need to be concerned about holding the book. I can just open it and it has to stay opened. And also convenience for the owner of the passport. When closed, you want to make sure that for the
the document is closed for his own privacy, right? So that's the flexibility factor. Durability, that's another important point. The passport booklet must pass the ICAO tests, the ICAO durability tests, and those tests is a physical damage evaluation method, which requires mechanical stress with 60 Newton applied force to tear the data page. And no part of the data page should be missing. And also, more than 90% of the binding should be intact. Another thing that is done to test the durability of the material is the use of chemical attacks as well, and with temperature and so on. So here's just an example that shows one of our colleagues just hanging in just from using the hinge. So and he's 90 kilos, so it's a very resistant product. Another factor I want to talk about, which is very important, probably one of the one that most of us are very concerned, is the security, of course. Right? The hinge has to provide the security to the document. It doesn't matter if you build the best document you can with all the beautiful images. And I like when was talked here about all the features that are so important in terms of the design and all those things. It's all important, and we value that too. But of course, you want to make sure that nobody can access the data and modify the data or remove or replace that page, right? So the ICAO 9303 lists the removal and the substitution of pages, like I said before, as one of the main threats for travel documents. And therefore, one of the threats that we face with the hinge is the removing the page, so cutting the page and removing and substituting for another one. The other threat, which is probably the most dangerous, is the ability to have access to the information inside the PC and page and changing it. So if there's a way that the counterfeiter will open the page and will access with a laser and modify information, that's one thing that we need to, of course, avoid. So a small cut on the hinge should never propagate. It should never allow the hole to go beyond what it is and allow the access to removing the page. So those are the things that we are concerned. The fourth point that I mentioned was the ease of use by the companies, the print companies or passport manufacturers. Of course, the hinge has to provide easy insertion into the manufacturing process, and also flexibility, like I said before, is a very important factor, but also the adaptability of the hinge material within the manufacturing line. It doesn't matter if it's a plate and press process or either a continuous roll process. The material has to be easy to use. Also, easy to be sewn in into the book after it's made. So let's talk a little bit about the attacks, the most common attacks that we are aware of. So as you can see here, there are different things that can be used and be done to the page. Cutting the hinge along the original data page is one of the options that normally people try to do, and pasting a falsified data page in place. Another one would be slicing the data page and replacing the content, like I mentioned before. And the attacks can be done by heat, like with a hair dryer attack, or attempt to split the page with a scalpel, or from the beginning of the edges. That's another way that people try to access the data. And they can also try to weaken the data page by using different chemical products like ethyl acetate, and then use, of course, unnatural forces with a very high or very low temperature and extreme mechanical stress as well. So this is just one example of an attack that we did in our laboratory, just to show. The test should be in such a way that 90% of the binding should stay in place. So this is just one example. And I'd like to overview here a little bit more what we're talking. Oh, sorry, back one slide. So, when we make a data page, there are some things that we need to take into consideration. There's a paradox we need to solve here. We need to work around it to make a good hinge and a good data page. So, and the paradox is the PC, the polycarbonate product, once is laminated, it becomes a monoblock, right? So all this, the secure printing elements, the personalization, and they are all done in different layers, and it becomes a full body with all the tactile surface, which makes it very resistant for splitting attacks. And that's the benefit of using the PC, right? Because then you have a monoblock of a document that has every information and compact. There's no way to split it apart, all the several layers that are used to make it. However, how can you make a hinge with PC? It's not the best situation because PC is not so flexible. So there's an issue right there. We need to work around that because PC not being so flexible, it cannot be used as a hinge. And then we have to use a non-polycarbonate material as the hinge in this construction. The problem comes as how you put those two different materials to work together in such a way that the data page is safe. You cannot open it, you cannot tear it apart, or you cannot remove the page. So there's this paradox of trying to mix two different materials. So what we do and what we recommend doing is we have different ways of making the hinge. So let's talk about three main ways here that we use in our company, and we know other companies use as well. And as all the countries that are here represented should be aware of, so that when you are building your passport, you can select the best solution for you. So one example here is when you have the hinge material placed in one side of the document. So this is a partial application in one of the sides only, and usually it is a weld, is an electronic welding method to apply it. That's one of the methods. Here is another form of making a hinge, which is still a partial hinge, but it's inserted within the layers of the PC. So it becomes fused within the layers in the center position, for example. Another option would be a full-page integral method, which in this case we have the hinge going all the way from the edge until the very other edge of the document. So it goes all the way inside the data page. And I'm going to be showing to you in the next slides just a few important information about each one of them, so you can understand better the benefits, the pros and cons of each one. So starting here with the hinge material on the edge. So these are some pictures of that explain to you what we can do to make it more secure. So in this case here, the hinge is applied in one of the edges only, and can be done with pins and holes, and like it shows on the picture on your left, and also it can be, it's just electronic welding, so it makes it very secure. And in this one here, it offers a very good level of security, because it does not compromise the passport data page, the whole data page, because you cannot tear apart any layer, because it's not involved in the construction of the entire document, entire page, right? So it doesn't compromise it, the structure of the page. It's the rigidity. It can be a concern in this case, depending on how the hinge is made. So that's the not so good side, is you don't have too much flexibility in this case, depending on how it's done. So it can, and sometimes it can be used, the hinge can be used as a point of attack to try to remove it. But the problem would be for whoever's trying to counterfeit the document, how to put it back together, which is not an easy thing. It requires more technique, and it's a very difficult process. And it makes, one thing that we can do to make this kind of hinge more secure is by adding security features into the hinge. So you can offset print, you can UV print, so that if somebody tries to cut and then reapply in another book or comes with another hinge to the same book, the information won't match, which makes it really secure. So, and you can do this, for example, with laser engraving, with embossing. There are several features that can be, several things that can be done to improve it. One thing I want to mention, since we are here, is the market adoption. About 16 countries have adopted this kind of construction. Sweden being one of the examples. The next one is when you have the hinge going all the way across the data page. In this particular case here, it is, let's say, you have the hinge goes all the way, and it can be, if not well put together, right? If it's not well fused, it could be a point for opening the document. So it's not the best construction, and you'll see that few countries have adopted this kind of construction, because if you are able to split them, if the temperature during the fusing process was not good enough, if you didn't have holes in the document to kind of blend the two different materials here, it could be a point for opening, accessing the data from behind, laser imaging, modifying a picture, modifying a data, and then putting it back together. So it's not the most recommended. And it does not offer too much flexibility because the page becomes very heavy and it's not so flexible. So it's something to take into consideration. Of course, what we recommend as well is in the hinge area to do the same thing as I showed in the previous slide, which it is to add different security features, printing, to get it, in a situation where if somebody tries to cut it, try to remove it, you still have security features that can be identified from forensic analysis, for example. One thing that we normally do and we recommend is adding these security features, like, for example, lenses that can be imaged with laser and show floating and sinking images. That's something that will make it really hard for somebody to try to counterfeit it, because once they break it apart, the lenses are gone and they cannot laser image it again, and therefore you're not going to have the floating and sinking effect that you had before the tampering. So that's one of the options that we do. And 6 countries have adopted this application here. The next one is a partial integration, but within the layers of the data page. So it's not on the edge, but it's on the center. This we consider to be the best construction, I would say, one of the best constructions, because it doesn't go all the way across, and therefore it doesn't compromise the hinge for being opened later on. And it offers very high flexibility because it's in the center, so it's very balanced, if you will. And in this case here, you can also add holes in the hinge material to get a better adhesion between the PC and the hinge material. Like I mentioned before, there are different constructions, so you have to find ways to blend them together and make it very secure. So it's hard for tearing apart. Another recommendation that we do for our customers is to leave a space between the data page and the hinge, so that there's an area that can have security features in it as well, and makes it easier to apply different, like you can personalize, for example, the name of the person or the passport number in the hinge. So if cut, how can you replicate the same thing? Imagine if you have a floating image on the hinge with your name and passport number. If you cut it apart, how can you put it back together? So that's our recommendation. 21 countries have adopted this kind of construction. And I'm about to finish my presentation here with just two slides left. This one here, I want to summarize what we understand to be a hinge that has a high quality, right? So it has to bring should not bring any weakness to the data page, of course. Has to be durable and flexible, like we said before, and has to pass the ICAO test, of course. And it has to be backed by effective countermeasures. In other words, like I mentioned earlier, you have to add additional features to make it more secure. And to finalize my presentation here, I want to just do a few comparison between them side by side, and in terms of flexibility, durability, security, and the market adoption as well. So looking first for the hinge that is partially integrated inside the document. We believe this is the best. Actually, not only we, but according to our analysis and the correlated by the market adoption, you see 49%, almost half % of the market has adopted this kind of hinge compared to the other ones. And it offers a good flexibility, durability, and security as well. This other one here is the one that I mentioned first, which is applied on one of the sides. The drawback in this case is the flexibility. Because it's in one side only, it doesn't have a good flexibility as the previous one, and the adoption rate is 37%. And the last one is the hinge that I mentioned that goes all the way across the data page. In this particular case, like I said, if not well put together, it could be a point of access to the image and change of the data in the data page, which we don't want, of course. And therefore, it loses 1 point there in the security element, if you will, and has adoption 14% in the market. I want to thank you all for the opportunity. And if you have additional questions about my presentation, and if you want to see the samples, we have a bunch of samples there that we can show to you in our booth at Gamalto, booth 26. Please feel free to join us. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope you have a great show.
Thank you, Tony. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony, for your presentation. Thank you also for lunch. And I appreciate the challenge you were under, because as you were speaking, the aroma of the lunch was coming into the hall. It must have been very difficult to hold everyone back. So, job well done. Thank you, everyone, for your participation this morning. Thank you for your patience, and enjoy lunch. We'll see you at 2 o'clock. Thank you.